I'm Mirror Fatheree.
This is Mirror Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek. Welcome to the 42nd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. As you may not know, we have crossed universes to come into your Prime Universe and take over Tex-Trek. We are forcing the Prime Universe Dave and Fatheree to praise the Terran Empire as it should be praised.
I have a feeling the agony booth gave them sufficient motivation.
Indeed. So today they will be enlightening all of you on the struggles the proud Terran people went through during the Mirror Universe episodes of Deep Space Nine.
Tragic.
So we will now transfer communications over to them aboard the starship Texas. Here's what they have to say.
Are we doing this, Fatheree?
Do we have a choice?
We've been spent hours in the agony booth, but I'm willing to press on because I do really like Deep Space Nine, what I've seen of it, and also they'll torture us if we don't.
Yeah.
So we should pull ourselves together, and if our audience will forgive us, we may twitch a little bit in spasmodic pain, but we can push on.
Well, it is my favorite Star Trek show.
All right, and you know what? I'm warming to it. I've started watching regular Deep Space Nine episodes per your suggestion on the anniversary,
The 25th anniversary of DS9.
right? And I've of course watched some out of order, but it's not hindering me my enjoyment whatsoever. And ultimately, we'll get around to talking about some more chronological stuff or seasons as a whole. But in the meantime, we should probably focus on the Mirror episodes.
Yeah, for those of y'all who don't know, Dave is terrible at binge watching TV.
Yes, it's not a thing I do.
Which I don't watch a lot of non-Star Trek TV, so I can relate. I do watch a bit more than Dave, though. He's like the only person who watches less TV than me. But yeah,
I go to the theater.
Well, that's
I did literally go to the theater yesterday, but I'm actually not a theater goer. I can't claim to be that fancy.
I guess today you can.
I did watch a Shakespeare play a couple weeks ago, though.
Yeah, was it the one in Round Rock, the cowboy version?
It's not the cowboy version of Much Ado. It was. I'm gonna blank on it. It's a super lesser known play.
No one cares about our stupid Austin, Texas plays, anyways.
No.
We're here to talk about the Mirror Universe episodes of DS9.
All right.
Where I was trying to get to was that Dave, without watching a ton of Deep Space Nine, I didn't know how this was going to work.
Right, but I actually have some questions when we start talking about you about Garrick and a few other things because I haven't seen enough of him to know what quite his role he ends up with as compared to his Mirror Universe role. But we'll get to that.
I was very unsure how the 5 Mirror Universe episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine would work if someone just sat and watched all 5 of them for the first time.
I like them all.
Yeah, surprisingly well is how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, there is enough of a through line, and yet each episode is its own self-contained narrative that they flow together pretty perfectly.
You know, it was interesting to watch them all. I kind of love that, which we will get into in a little bit, that the last episode is both the kind of the funniest one and also has some of the biggest events occur in it.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking about, and this is, you can tell me, cast yourself back to teenage or whatever Fatheree in the 90s watching this. When they first did the next week on Deep Space Nine, and you saw Mirror Universe stuff, they must have known it was the Mirror Universe from the trailer, right? Do you remember? Were you excited, or when you kind of realized it was happening? Because it was the first one since the '60s show to go to the Mirror Universe. Were you interested at the time, or were you like, oh, I can't tell what's happening in that episode, or did you even assess it as a Mirror Universe episode until it was done?
I thought that was really cool, but I don't think I appreciated how big of a deal that was.
Yeah.
Because it was still when I was pretty new to Star Trek, and
You were getting a lot of Star Trek at that time in the 90s.
Yeah, and this...
Movies, Next Gen, DS9 crossover.
Right, and like at the same time as I was watching the new episodes of DS9 and Voyager, it was also the same time I was getting into the reruns of Next Generation and the original series.
Yeah.
And getting the... every version ever printed of Michael and Denise Okuda's Star Trek Encyclopedia.
Yep.
And I think that's probably where I learned about the Mirror Universe first.
Interesting.
But I knew of the episode Mirror Mirror. I didn't see it for a while. But yeah, I was.
But you weren't like, oh my god, it's a Return to the Mirror Universe. They never touch back on stuff like that.
I don't think I appreciated how unique that was until later.
Yeah, I think had I been watching, I think I would have been that person. I would have been like super hyped for it. But I was watching Babylon 5 and snubbing it. So I didn't get to see it.
Babylon 5 didn't have no cool mirror universe.
They didn't. They did have an alternate universe where things went to shit. You did briefly see that, where the station blew up. Maybe it was a glimpse of a possible future. Garibaldi, big old gun, holding off shadows or something.
The station does blow up.
Yeah, but that wasn't the scene.
Well, you never watched Season 5.
That's true.
But you should watch the last episode of B5.
Our captors are going to kill us if we don't stay on task here.
So Star Trek Deep Space Nine. If you are a old school fan of the original series, though, Deep Space Nine is the most nostalgic. I would say even more so than Enterprise. Maybe with the exclusion of Season 4 of Enterprise, but yeah, it is the most throwback to the original series.
Whether you're talking about whether you're talking about going back to literally to the Trouble with Tribbles, or all of the original main named Klingons uniting to call Dax into on a blood pact mission. You pointed out the titles would begin to take inspiration from the sort of more poetic, imaginative titles of the original show.
Yeah, the names.
Although sadly, the title of this episode is a little bit lame. It is merely titled Crossover. So that's so next gen.
Yeah, well, this was still when Michael Piller was on DS9, so that might have something to do with that. Michael Piller did great work, by the way, but he did not have those awesome episode titles that DS9 would become known for. You know, basically the first Mirror Universe episode was in Deep Space Nine, occurs in Season 2. It opens with Major Kira, Dr. Bashir returning from an away mission on a runabout.
Oh, may I ask you, what episode number was this one again? Or what season and what episode?
Season 2, episode 23, so towards the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, you know, so as they're traveling around, Bashir is being a pain in the butt. And I know we don't necessarily need to get into this detail on the episode, but I was just thinking that he struck me as like he would be like kind of a milady type of guy.
Yeah, I mean, that was more something in like the early seasons. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so there's definitely like early annoying Dr. Bashir.
I love that later on in the episode, Prime Kira will let him undergo maybe a little bit more pain than otherwise because she recognizes that he needs to see how the other half lives.
Yeah,
that was some righteous.
That was something that you don't get on the other Star Trek shows, because on so many of them, every character is in Starfleet, and a Starfleet person wouldn't do that.
Yeah, but a pissed off Bajoran would.
Well, that's why DS9 is so great, is because not all the people are Starfleet.
Yep. All right, so they're in the runabout.
Yeah, they're returning through the wormhole to go back to the station, and they find it's not there. The station is still being called Terok Nor. There are Klingons around. It's still in orbit of Bajor. It never got moved to the wormhole. Yep. They're not really sure what the hell is going on. They get onto the station.
Well, they're captured by Klingons that are very deferential. They're like, "Oh, we didn't know it was you.
We didn't mean to capture you."
Yeah, because they are seeing Kira and thinking she's a different Kira.
Yeah, so basically they're in the Mirror Universe. It's been 100 years since we saw it on the original series. And
it's very sad that the Alliance, or rather, that the Terran Empire seems to have collapsed. I mean, it seemed very sad to me. But probably good, because it means that we find out Spock's reforms took. They took. It was bad for the Terran Empire.
Yeah, the way that the Mirror Kira explains it was that Spock's reforms took over. weakened the Empire. The Klingons and Cardassians joined forces, defeated them, enslaved the Terrans, and you have a Bajor that has a
bad day for Terrans.
The Bajorans have a very prominent role in this.
Right, they
alliance.
petitioned the new alliance for membership and granted it. One of the things I loved about this episode is that Kira, when she learns this from the very prominent character of the Intendant, aka Mirror Kira, is like, for the first time ever, is somewhat jealous of something in the Mirror Universe. We see something where they're like, oh, I wish this were the case, that Bajor could be the power that it is in this alternate universe. I thought that was a really cool idea, to actually... to just not play it as so black and white. I mean, it's very Deep Space Nine that they would do that. That, it's like the Mirror Universe is not all bad.
Everything's more nuanced on DS9. Mm-hmm. When Worf comes over to the station, like there's actually like this misunderstanding that Worf is involved in, and Sisko has to explain to him, DS9 has more shades of gray than the Enterprise.
It's a very literal way to put it, but it also makes sense. They're. I mean, I could of course see him saying that because they are in a politically.
It was a reminder to the audience,
but they are in a politically problematic sector.
But yeah, not just on a meta level. It works.
Right, it does actually work as something he would say. Anyway, so Kira and what's his name? Bashir get taken. He gets thrown in the mines. Like, I guess I'd forgotten that Terok Nor was originally like a mining processing station. I don't know what they were mining exactly.
Yeah, they mine ore from
Bajor.
Okay. It goes up there and it's refined.
That seems like a lot of trouble to take it all the way up into space to work it, but I'm not going to argue with him.
My dog is snoring again, and I don't want to get agonized, so please don't mind that.
Our captors could agonize the dog, but it seems like even in the Mirror Universe, they recognize that dogs are sacred and they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, especially when she's named Emperor Philippa Georgia.
Yeah, you could get in big trouble. But Kira finds herself in a rather more complex role than Bashir.
Well, for one, she has her doppelganger trying to make a move on her.
Right, her doppelganger is running the station,
which
and
really freaked me out as a kid.
Oh man, what little I saw of this, I was like, well, that's kind of hot in the 90s.
I mean, like,
it's weird. It's like masturbatory because it's not just the then taboo-ish lesbianism, sometimes brought out for titillation in the 90s, but it's also like towards yourself. They wouldn't do that on Buffy for some years with Willow's kind of like messing with herself a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, like the Intendant, aka Mirror Kira, is almost like a Ming the Merciless type person running this station. Super decadent, sex slaves all around, including Sisko. But you get the impression probably anybody she taps on the shoulder,
he was more than a slave. He had a job.
Right.
He went out and he was basically the tax collector.
Right, but he's like, but it was also, well, I think of it more as like the from the pirate era, like a privateer.
Yeah.
He was like allowed to work for them and get favors, but it was sort of always remember your place. And when Kira calls him in, he gets this very serious look on his face, like, oh God. And he knows he's got to essentially pay the piper. But then he kind of turns around and he's like all patting his pirate-type boys on the back, like, you know what this is all about? And he's trying to put a brave face on it. But it does seem clear that he's basically just her fuck toy.
So we should go over all the Mirror Universe people that we see in this episode.
Yep.
So we have Mirror Sisko.
At least one of them won't make it.
Yeah, that's gonna be true for all of these, I think.
Yeah.
So we have Mirror Sisko. He basically he flies around and collects tribute for the Intendant.
Yeah.
We have Mirror Garrick, who is her second in command on the station.
Right, and he's like sort of like the slave master in the mines, and is clearly
Odo's the slave.
Oh, you're right. He's just more for harsher punishments and stuff. It does seem like Kira. Well, we'll get to her in a minute. So I was going to ask, how big a role had Garrick had prior to this? Because he's very big in the Mirror Universe. Was he kind of just always doing little prompting, things and maybe even Deus Ex Machina stuff?
No. But he had, he does that stuff later, but I don't think they had gotten into anything.
Even in the first episode or two, which I've watched, he clues them in on something pretty big.
He basically just had like a couple of episodes prior to this where it was mainly between him and Dr. Bashir. Where
he had never become officially prominent in any way on the station.
Yeah, and it was at this point like they still didn't know much about his backstory, so no one was sure like who this Cardassian is. Why is he still on the station? Is he
exactly? Who is Alliance?
Is he spying for the Cardassians? Is he an exile from the Cardassians? He sure seems to know way more than he should know. Kind of like Shepard Book on Firefly,
right? But I guess that in the big scheme of things, it seems like in the same way Sulu was much more prominent in the Mirror Universe.
Yes, yeah, totally. Like
kind of is that the role here.
Yeah.
So who else do we have?
We have Mirror Odo, who is the slave driver.
Right. And is kind of Odo-esque. He's just mean to everybody.
Yeah, he's super mean, and he's super efficient, apparently. His slaves work well.
For all that Bashir starts out, and he's in that kind of annoying mode and annoying the shit out of Kira in the runabout, I had to respect him for kind of like when Odo is like is basically processing him, he's kind of not taking any shit. He says he's a doctor, and Odo like slaps him, and he's like, "There's no Terran doctors. What are you talking about?" And he kind of keeps on, he realizes he's got to kind of defer to him, but he kind of still keeps giving him shit, and he gets smacked around once or twice. And I was like, all right, he's got some stones, So I was a little bit impressed with Bashir for taking Odo's punishment.
And we also have Mirror O'Brien, who is toiling away, doing the mind work with.
He's a sad sack. He is a sad sack.
Yeah, and he kind of has like a little bit more prominent position than the other slaves because he's allowed to do because he's still, even in this universe, he's naturally a good mechanic.
Right.
So they allow him to do maintenance and stuff, make repairs.
But yeah, when he eventually finds out about how things are for the other O'Brien, it's like it pushes him to mutiny. Essentially, he's like, oh my god. He's like, even he'll go on to say towards the end of the episode, even if what they've told me is mostly a fairy tale, it's still got to be better than this life.
Yeah, and if you ever read any literature based on interviews with slaves from when slavery existed in America, you do kind of see some weird things like that where you can just tell by how they describe things that they can have slaves in slave culture can have a hard time trying to imagine themselves outside of slave culture because for a lot of them, it's all that they just assume that's all that there can ever be for them.
Right. It's kind of like 1984 controlling the language. You can't conceive of something if you've never seen it or don't have a word for it. If it's outside your experience, how can you yearn for it?
Yeah, it's depressing as fuck, is what it is.
It is. Oh, but the episode itself is not that dark.
No, and one of the. I guess, well, no, I take that back. This is kind of dark too, but I'm going to get into Mirror Universe Quark.
Yeah.
And how this Quark is a humanitarian. He's still a bartender on the station, but he's got this secret underground railroad where he's trying to... He's basically like the Harriet Tubman of the station. Yep. He's trying to sneak slaves off the station. And
I also believe there are overt references made to Casablanca.
Yes.
And getting exit visas for people who would be allies in the war. It had been pointed out by my brother, but there's overt lines from Casablanca he speaks, I think. But anyway, Quark. Of all people, the good guy.
And he ends up getting caught and put to death. Mm-hmm. And it starts a tradition of killing Ferengi in the Mirror Universe.
Yeah.
Star Trek Deep Space Nine episodes.
It's a rough universe, as we have noted before.
Well, for that family in particular.
Yes.
But
probably the most prominent person has to be Kira, right? Who runs the station?
Yeah. The most of the episode focuses on Kira, and we did talk about how we find out more about the fallout of Kirk's incursion into the Mirror Universe, and Spock basically takes over, becomes Emperor, tries to put in all this reform. The Cardassians and Klingons defeat the Terran Empire.
Yeah.
But She also brings up how, because of that, everyone's real paranoid about Prime Universe people coming over again.
Oh, right.
And so yeah, you can't use the transporters to go back anymore.
Yeah, they basically tweak the technology. It's like there's a screen up, that'll keep mirror people from getting through. Yeah, because that has to be like a terrifying notion that all the work you might put into in whatever your endeavor could be undone by somebody from the other side who comes over and starts a revolution.
Yeah, and
I actually... Oh, go ahead.
Well, that's going to make it harder for Bashir and Kira to get back.
Right.
So the only way to do it is to go back through the wormhole. And there's also a bit of a ticking clock here because Garrick tells Kira that he's going to kill Bashir.
Yep. If she does not assist in his scheme to assassinate the intendant.
Yeah. So even though they're not Terrans, even though this is on the Alliance side, it still has that, stab your boss in the back and take his job type of mentality.
Yep. I actually ended up really liking the intendant on this. I thought she had some interesting complexity brought out. And
she's a great villain. She's one of the best female villains in Star Trek.
Well, yeah, and this was a perfect case of, like, it's fun to be the bad guy, but I don't know if anybody seemed like they were having more fun than Nana Visitor in these episodes. Aside from, like, she had, like, people on a leash and bathing her and, like, all this sort of decadent, like I say, Ming the Merciless type stuff. There's some depth of character when she's talking to Kira, and when she says, like, at one point she says something like, well, we also see that she is she's at odds, like, with Garrick, and she does not seem as innately violent. She's a lover, not a fighter, and doesn't necessarily want to see people put to death. She is fascistic in that mirror universe sense that almost everybody seems to be who has power, but she doesn't want to really use violence. She's not as quick to use it if she can help it. And there's a part where she's talking to Prime Kira, who she kind of, like Garrick has said, like, she can't stop talking about you. Kira knows that she's in love with herself. And she as much as says, she's like, if you can't love me, that is to say, the intendant says, if you can't love me, who can? And you get this sense that she's actually very lonely and sort of isolated in her power, that maybe she has this self-loathing built up, that she kind of is like, I'm going to say kind of, with cognitive dissonance, has pushed away all the bad stuff she's done, but it's left her kind of lonely and, just kind of like living out, like having sort of a lot of meaningless sex and stuff like that. But she wants somebody who actually can, like, who understands her.
She copes with hedonism.
Right.
But she's not entirely satisfied.
Right. She would like to connect with someone, I think, and her rare opportunity is with herself from the mirror universe, which Kira does. I can't remember. Would you say she exploits it? Does she use that? I mean,
yes, for sure.
It gives her free reign of the station.
Because really, they should have been killed on the spot,
right?
For being crossovers from the Prime Universe.
Well, that was another really interesting notion. And Deep Space Nine did more building, I think, than any of the other shows in revealing, here's the future of the mirror universe for the first time ever. But she was also, they do something that's unique, which is, somebody went over to the mirror universe and didn't have to go into skulking hiding. They did in TOS, they did in Discovery, but here she had the run of the station. She had a limited sort of version of freedom. And that was a really neat idea, I thought. So that she kind of got to do something that no other Prime Universe visitors get to do so much. I guess, arguably, a little bit of Burnham.
Burnham is, yeah.
But
it's because, she's undercover.
Right. Anyway, so I liked all of that stuff, and I really, really liked, the intendant as a character. But eventually our guys got to get free.
Yeah, and just one last thing about the intendant, though, is I would say that that is pretty much as deep of a character as you can get in one little 45-minute story, and that is a testament to the great character writing you get on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. I was going to say there is, arguably, I would say this is probably an objective truth, that the Mirror Universe's use of sort of hedonism and sometimes what would be taboo subjects like lesbianism.
We should bring that up.
Can be a kind of gross problematic thing.
Well, one of the things that the women at Warp have pointed out on their podcast, which if y'all haven't checked them out, you totally should.
Super good podcast.
Yeah, womenatwarp.com. They're all over Spotify and iTunes, all that. But one of the things that they pointed out is that, in the mirror universe, you do kind of see like a correlation between fluid morality and fluid sexuality. Right. And how like that is...
It makes it feel like by association, those things are something that bad people do.
And that is something that I kind of had a problem with these... As much as I love Deep Space Nine and love the mirror universe, I always thought it was weird that, like, Kira never seems to have, like, that bisexuality in the Prime universe, and I think that's, like, really weird if you could say, like, only the evil version of her is the one that'll have that.
The one way I could maybe explain it is that broadly they are more... Everybody in the universe would be somewhat more... Mirror universe would be somewhat more transgressive because they already push... They're used to breaking outside of bounds... so that, like, even a person who is not, say, bisexual might be like... It might just enter into their head what could be a fleeting thing in the regular universe. Could I enter into their head because they already... They're not used to restraining themselves or restraining isn't quite the right word, but, like, limiting themselves, I suppose.
Maybe, but
it can't help but come across as kind of creepy, queasy. It did function, I think, in the pulp sense that it was intended to, which is 90s audiences probably found it titillating and taboo and naughty. And I would count myself among those in the very little bit I saw of it.
Sure, but
it is viewed through any sort of open-minded lens. It's kind of scary.
Well, I always appreciated how, like, the Bajorans, as religious as they are, still seem to have, like, an incredible amount of sexual freedom in their society.
Yeah.
And, we do see Kira date several different men, have several different serious relationships over the course of the show. Because DS9 is the show where, like, things happen and have long-term consequences.
Right.
And... there was never, like, any conflict between, like, that and her, spiritual beliefs. And I was like, I wish that Earth religions could be more like that.
Right.
And so, like, for me to be like, but it doesn't make, like, if there is any bisexuality in her, I feel like she should have been...
It should have come out.
It should have come out in both universes.
Yeah. But... Instead, it's a cue for decadent evil people.
Yeah.
That's how they use... That's the trope they use.
They should have done better with that, but... Well...
Yeah.
I think we covered that, so moving on. Their worst fears happen with the Klingon-Cardassian alliance. Their worst fears come to pass. These people from the other universe do start a rebellion.
Yeah.
And they get the Terrans on the station to rebel, and O'Brien and Sisko's crew help them out.
Yep. And they will become major players in subsequent episodes. You will see a lot of O'Brien as sort of the either the leader or, like, second lieutenant, essentially, of the rebellion.
He's one of, like, the most important humans to live in that universe. The next time we see the mirror universe on DS9 is...
also, by the way, Odo gets blown up.
Oh, yeah, that was so cool, yeah.
It's a great effect. I don't know quite what they did to do it, but... It's like they blew up. It looks real. Like, his, like, gelatinous stuff explodes everywhere.
Yeah, there's like a physical explosion.
Bashir gets him, right?
Yeah, with a phaser.
Score another for Bashir.
So yeah, that's the end of Odo.
That means that Prime Universe has killed Bashir, or has killed Odo effectively, even if it was an alternate universe version of him. That's a weird thing to live with. You'd think that when you went back, would it be weird talking to Odo afterwards? I killed a version of you.
Yeah, I killed you in another universe.
It's just something to think about.
Huh. I bet Bashir never brings that up.
I don't think he probably would. But I do think that it would be an interesting thing to bring up in, like, one of those expanded universe novels or something, where he might, in some serious conversation with him, reveal it, or he might be talking to Kira or Dax or something like that, and say... I don't like to reflect on this too often, but this is a thing that happened. And...
Oh, yeah, like, he's haunted by it. Like, he's like, every night when I close my eyes to go to sleep, I see Odo exploding.
You make it sound silly, I'm afraid.
I can never forgive myself.
I don't think he has to be haunted every night, but he has to know that he does have the capacity in him to kill someone who looks like a friend.
That's not that different from our world, where anyone holding a gun can kill anyone.
I'd kill you
else,
in a
but-
second. If I thought for 1 second you might be a mirror father, I would detonate you. I'm saying that for our overlords.
Yeah, they probably are getting a chuckle out of that. But anything that's not us getting agonized, more power to it. But the next time we see the Mirror Universe on Deep Space Nine is in Season 3 in the episode Through the Looking Glass. Mm-hmm. And we don't see Bashir go back over there, but we see Sisko. And we actually meet Mirror Bashir, as well as a bunch of other new Mirror versions of people.
Yep.
You know, this is basically a story of, in this universe, Ben Sisko didn't lose his wife like he did in the Prime universe. And
this becomes a very personal episode because, well, O'Brien essentially kidnaps him at the beginning of the episode. That's to say, Mirror O'Brien kidnaps Prime Sisko.
Comes to Prime DS9, kidnaps Prime Sisko, takes him back to the Mirror Universe.
Sisko's like, and he like immediately disarms him, and he's like, "Beam me back." Which so he's cool. I appreciated that he that O'Brien was not a super physical threat to him. But then he's like, "Hear me out." And Sisko's like, "Nope, not helping you," which it does bring up the kind of like, what is your responsibility?
It'd be really annoying if it's like at morning and you just get to work and then someone's like, "Oh, you're coming to my universe to help me with this thing."
Yeah, with
the
rebellion.
Time for this?
Well, that's basically his attitude until he says, until he reveals. Well, at first he's like, "I just need you to go on one mission to complete a mission that you were killed in this universe. So I need you to fill in for yourself and just finish out this mission." And I think even then he's like, no, until he finds out it's to rescue his wife.
Yeah, so basically Jennifer Sisko is alive in this universe, and she's a collaborator with the Klingon Cardassian Alliance. Mm-hmm. They make her walk around
under duress.
They make her walk around with like that little badge, kind of like the Star of David from the Holocaust.
I forgot that.
Little badge of Earth.
Yeah, you're a lowly Terran. Or did they say like Terran sometimes?
Well, that's what Avery Brooks says, because sometimes he pronounces things weird.
Yeah.
But they established that she had like a very privileged family.
That's true.
And we saw that her husband was had a more privileged position, so that kind of tracks.
Yeah.
But this rebellion started the year previously. Has continued. They're hiding in the Badlands near Bajor.
Yep, as seen in Voyager episode 1.
Yeah, well, they had shown them in DS9 a couple of times before this too.
Prior to
Voyager.
Oh wow, I thought that was exclusive to Voyager.
No, Voyager's whole premiere stands on the shoulders of DS9.
Interesting. There's like space whirlwinds in the Badlands. It looks like tornadoes of galactic dust.
I think those visuals didn't exist until Voyager, because you get big money for a pilot and you can do stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's a good place to hide, because like the Maquis spends a lot of time hiding there in the Prime universe, and in the Mirror universe, the Terran Rebellion spends a lot of time hiding there. And Jennifer Sisko is going to build like this way to scan the Terran ships through the Badlands and find out where all their hidden bases.
It's a rebel. She's building a rebel detector.
Yeah, basically a rebel detector. And so Ben Sisko agrees to help these rebels. We see Mirror Universe Rom, who says he's looking to avenge his brother.
Yep.
We see Mirror Universe Bashir, who is just a total shithead.
Yep.
We see Mirror Universe Dax, who apparently has a romantic relationship with Sisko. More on that in a second.
Yep.
We see Mirror Universe Tuvok, which even though we only briefly see him, that was really cool to see. But they should have given him the Spock goatee.
Yep. He didn't have to be the goatee. He could have had some other form of facial hair. He could have had a lumberjack hair.
I think they should just do that for every Mirror Universe Vulcan.
It's just a thing. That's how you evil up. But still, a cool crossover, very much binding all the series together. Yeah,
and so Mirror O'Brien, he's leading this team of rebels.
Big hair Bashir is like all challenging for authority, right?
O'Brien's like, you need to punch him when he's like challenging Sisko.
Yeah,
he's like, our Sisko would have punched him by now. Go ahead and punch him.
Yeah, it happens, and that'll come back to somewhat haunt him later.
Yeah, and in one of the later episodes, I believe.
It occurred to me that by having the fulcrum of the episode is Jennifer Sisko, and that this is actually, in some ways, when the Mirror Universe concept is most closely tied to Jerome Bixby's original story, which was, I think, the emotional crux of that was a guy who had sort of fallen out of love with his wife or had an emotionally troubled relationship in an alternate universe was able to find fulfillment again.
Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about that in our previous episode of Tex-Trek.
Yeah.
Just briefly, that story was about a guy.
He was in a car crash and he found himself in an altered but not quite mirror universe, just different. A million different small changes in it. Among them, though, was that he, continued to have a passionate relationship with his wife, and it made him difficult for him to leave when he wanted to go. So some of what happens with Sisko, I have no idea if the writers were particularly inspired by that, but if nothing else, because she had been, she's essentially in Sisko's origin story in episode 1 of Deep Space Nine. It was a very clever idea. It made a lot of sense to use a mirror universe version of her to create this emotional storyline for him when he visits. But yeah, whether it was intentionally meant to evoke Jerome Bixby's original story that he would later convert into very, very broadly into the mirror universe first episode, I have no idea.
And did we mention that the Ben Sisko of this universe is dead? And that's why I
did mention that, like O'Brien says that it's like off-screen death. And that is true, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they ever undo that or just say like he was faking or something like that. He is definitely dead. It'll create some complications as Jennifer Sisko at various times does or doesn't believe in Prime Sisko.
Yeah, and it was cool to see them interact again. Mm-hmm. And we also they don't explain all the details of their plan, so the audience doesn't quite know what's going on. It kind of looks like Mirror Rom is betraying the rest of the rebels,
right?
But that was part of their plan all along. But he gets killed by the Intendant, so there's another Ferengi death here.
Yeah.
But eventually, Sisko does convince Jennifer to not aid the Alliance, and only big issue I have with this episode is I think it's a little anticlimactic. This is where Sisko knew the codes to the station, to the auto-destruct, and Kira was like, oh, well, he changed the code, so I can't stop the auto-destruct. I guess we have to let them all go.
Yeah, it's a little bit of honestly, it's a little bit of a prefix code, Wrath of Khan kind of moment.
But way more convenient than that.
Right.
Like, that didn't win the day. They still had to deal with Khan when that happened.
Right.
This was like, oh yeah, we just defeated the bad guy, and we can all live happily ever after.
It did give Sisko a chance to, after having been on the run essentially the entire episode, to talk some trash to them. Which, while he was doing that, I was thinking, oh, this is going to come back to haunt him. I suppose in some ways I was slightly disappointed that the Intendant and her people did not get some sort of harsher payback. Because, man, I was just like, they were just seething at having to kind of let him go. I wanted to say, I felt like, I don't know if I'll ever see a cooler Sisko than him escaping from, with 2 Klingon disruptors, kind of John Woo cool style, battling it out in the corridors. That was super badass.
And I take it back. What I said about, like, my only problem was, like, how anticlimactic it is. I do dislike that Sisko, while pretending to be Mirror Sisko, has sex with Mirror Dax.
Yeah, that was another one of those things where she's like, oh, hey, you're Sisko. We have a relationship here. He quickly picked up on that, just like Kirk picks up on things quick. And he just rolled with it.
But
you don't think she would have known?
Well, she figures it out. Like she even admits, like, oh, I knew something was wrong all along.
Yeah, but, that's true.
They have such a nice, healthy, platonic relationship, friendship in the Prime universe.
At the very least, you think that Sisko would be a little bit disturbed by kind of having to, like, yes, Dax is very pretty, we get it, the audience was no doubt, like, she was kind of one of the babe of the show, but, it should mean something to him to have random sex with her and to have to, then it has to be this meaningless thing.
Yeah, that would be weird to come back and like in your mind the whole rest of the time you know each other being like, oh yeah, I totally know what it's like to have sex with you.
Yeah. It's weird. Although Mirror Her was probably into some super crazy
and
stuff.
also just like the morality of like pretending to be someone else. It's kind of rapey.
Right. Arguably, Kirk kicked it off with the Captain's Woman in the original one. He never said, "I am not Mirror Kirk." Now you think like, oh, well, the Captain's Woman was effectively a prostitute, so, but still misled her. Yeah. I'm gonna say Kirk kicked it off. Sadly, sorry, Kirk. But also, sadly, these writers don't seem to have particularly ever thought that was a moral issue.
They also gave her character more stuff to do than they did with Mirror Universe Dax. She was very unnecessary in this.
Mirror Dax?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did appreciate, I noticed that she was like sort of the realist of the rebellion. She sort of felt like they had no chance, and I think she was trying to get Sisko to run with her, I think.
Oh, yeah, she wanted to run away.
Yeah, which felt like that would be like a practical good idea, honestly. Like, if you were part of the rebellion in those circumstances, probably not the craziest notion. So I actually do think she has some canniness to her. I also thought, there's a line I jotted down while I was watching it that Jennifer Sisko, Mirror Jennifer, says when she thinks, I guess she's talking to her husband and working with the rebellion. She says, "The only thing you've accomplished is to give the Alliance an excuse to treat the Terrans worse than before." So because of their rebellion, they're really harsh on Terrans now. And that kind of led me to think, I'm like, man, can you win in the Mirror Universe? Can justice ever prevail? Or is everything just a kind of constantly worsening state of rival fascists? They don't get too dark with it. It still is an adventure, and it still is about Sisko cleverly finding their way back home. But if you dig a little beneath the surface, it's pretty dark thoughts.
Yeah, but I get elements of that in real life. People who have this kind of like defeatist, very like moderate approach to things about
right. Well, if you feel like if you feel like you can't affect big change, or like then like what's the point of doing it at all? It can be easy to feel that way. If you can't solve everything at once, or if you have to do something that's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that's definitely where she's approaching it from.
Yeah, the rebellion.
Like her sympathies are with the Terrans, but she thinks that by putting an end to the rebellion, it'll do more good than harm for her people.
Overall, I like the episode. I think that when Sisko first sees his wife, I actually almost expected a more emotional reaction than he had, and somewhat in the farewell as well. And I thought there might be slightly missed opportunities there. Right, it's not farewell. This is a good segue.
Because then in season, I believe it's season 4, we have the episode Shattered Mirror, and that sees Jennifer Sisko of the Mirror Universe come into the Prime Universe.
Yeah, it just begins, she's just there.
Yeah, with Jake seeing his mom alive again.
Are they just using the worm? No, they have special devices at this point.
Yeah, they have that transporter device.
Yeah, had the rebellion essentially rigged that in the previous one?
Yeah, O'Brien used it to kidnap Sisko.
Right.
And then they had to, like, the transporters wouldn't work, so they had to come up with something. Yeah, all these other episodes have that.
Yep. But yeah, they're like just conversing. She came over though, right?
Yeah.
Because this will be a big plot point in it. Was that she was the one to come over?
Yeah, and then Jake goes over to Terok Nor.
He's super enamored. He's like, it's his mom back, as far as he's concerned. Looks like her, sounds like her, and she's at least putting on a good act that she cares as much. And
she's up front. They're like, yeah, I'm not your mom, but
right. But she certainly expresses a motherly interest in him, and even I think there's maybe a suggestion like, well, he wants Dad to get back together with her. In Jake's mind, this is pretty close to the real thing, ballpark enough for a kid who just wants his parents together, and indeed, he gets Sisko basically finds out that that his mirror ex has left, taking Jake with her.
Yeah,
and he goes to get his kid back.
And they're on the station now, because at this point the rebels have captured Terok Nor from the Intendant and the Alliance. And the problem with that is now that's gotten the attention of the big bad Alliance Regent.
Yes.
Who I guess is in command of this part of space under control of the Alliance. And the Regent turns out to be the Mirror Universe version of Worf.
Right. I believe we also in this, by the way, see the first Mirror Nog. Because Jake hangs out with him, and like Nog is like a little pimp or something.
Yeah, and Nog is an asshole in this universe, and he's glad that his dad and uncle have been killed, because now he runs the bar on the station under control of the rebels.
Yeah.
And so the main reason why Jennifer came over, though, was to get Ben Sisko, who... And I think I'm going to have to give you some Deep Space Nine backstory here.
That's alright.
But they're trying to construct a ship to fight off the Alliance, and when Mirror O'Brien made his incursion, he took the liberty of looking at the Deep Space Nine computers and saw they have this really kick-ass ship called the Defiant.
Yeah. My
personal favorite spaceship of any property of anything ever imagined.
Yep.
If I could have any spaceship for real, I would want the Defiant.
Yeah.
But
arguably the most ass-kicking ship in the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, kicking ass since '94 or whenever it first showed up. But
we'll say '94, sure.
Yeah, because it didn't appear until season 3 of the show. But the Defiant, or a new version of the Defiant, is being constructed at Terok Nor in the Mirror Universe, but they need some help. Now Sisko, after his wife was killed by basically Picard, and he was a Borg, and his ship was destroyed that he was serving on, he worked at the Utopia Planitia Fleet Yards on Mars, and while he was there, he oversaw the construction of Starfleet was making we're going to make a kick-ass Borg fighter ship, the Defiant. And which turned out to be kind of an impractical ship because it's so small but has so much power packed into it that has some technical problems, and they're hard to maintain.
Right, and the Mirror Universe the Rebellion is discovering this as they try to make it before the Alliance comes down, and they're on their way.
So here's another.
This feels very Old West to me.
Yeah,
this felt like Seven Samurai or something. The Horde is descending on the town, and we have to get our defenses up fast.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get our shit together, or we'll die.
Yes,
because the Regent ain't sparing no one.
Yes.
Oh, but the cool thing is that they have the Intendant as a prisoner at this point, so you kind of see her getting some pay. Well, Garrick is the Regent has him on this. It's kind of S&M looking. How he has Garrick chained up, or around
he's had to
the
become
neck with a
this
collar.
Kind of obsequious kind of advisor, major domo or whatever.
Yeah, but he's totally torturing Garrick, but he's punishing him for his failure.
Yeah,
he's why is it that you were the only one who escaped the station?
Yeah,
you coward. Because even in the Mirror Universe, the Klingons have a sense of honor.
Yep.
Even though Worf's a total dick, in the Prime timeline, he's the most honorable Klingon ever to walk the surface of Kronos. But the Rebellions are trying to get their copy of the Defiant built, which conveniently has all the exact same sets as the real Defiant.
Sure. Well, I can't argue too much with
Star Trek does that all the time. I mean, if you have replicators and you're making the exact same parts, it makes sense that things would look identical.
And I think O'Brien says or Sisko says, I can fix this for you in 2 weeks or something like that. And O'Brien is well, we have 3 days. Or some really tight timeline. So they've got to get it up and running.
It's some Scotty shit.
Yeah, so Sisko is straight up in there doing all kinds of engineer stuff working on it.
Can I get to the ending of the episode? Or
yeah.
Do you have something you want to throw in before that?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Just jump ahead.
So the coolest thing about the ending of this episode is that Sisko is well, I guess we have this ship up and running, and now the Regent is here, and you're going to fight the Klingons. And O'Brien's yeah, thanks. I guess you get back to your universe, I mean, it'd be cool if, I had a little bit more experience about this, or, whatever. He says, something one last, little bit of hook. When, Sisko's, trying to walk off the Defiant, and he just, pauses, And he's just like, oh man. And then, like, he just like turns around and he's like, alright, get out of the chair. I'm getting in the captain's chair. I'm going to show you how to do this. And he just starts like barking commands, and they have this badass battle with... they also have Dax and Bashir on one of their other rebellion ships.
Yep.
And they're able to fight off the giant Klingon cruiser that showed up.
It's a cool big fight.
Yeah.
A little bit like, honestly, a little Star Wars-y. It is Rebels versus the larger force ships and all that, like taking on a Star Destroyer.
And the other thing that happens there is that Nog, being the shithead he is in this universe, frees the Intendant.
Right.
He thanks her for, killing his uncle and his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing this, he gets killed himself.
Yeah.
And the Intendant also shoots Jennifer Sisko.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake has to watch his mom die again.
Yeah, that's messed up. Arguably, he was not there when she originally died, but essentially he has to learn about her death.
Yeah, he was. He was on the ship.
I guess that's true. He wasn't in the room with her. Sisko was, but not Jake.
No, Jake. Like they had to rescue Jake. He was unconscious, but he was.
Yeah, but he didn't. We
don't know what he saw before he got knocked out.
His ass was knocked out.
But
there was an explosion and shit fell on both of them. I got the impression. But yes, be that as it may, it was traumatic. Whether or not he literally saw her die or not. He was there. He was there on when it happened.
And Sisko, because even though she's shot, she doesn't die till later in the infirmary.
Right. She gets some dramatic last words.
Yeah, and he sees this face that belongs to the love of his life, and he sees the life leave it again.
Yeah. There's an interesting question to be asked in these episodes, which is what makes the person you love the person you love? Obviously, it has to go beyond something physical, but is there enough of them in an alternate universe version that you could fall for them? For Jake, it was close enough based on what he saw of her. For Sisko, it was not. But when he loses her, it's still super hard. It's difficult. I did, notice that, you remember way back in Mirror Mirror, the TOS episode, Spock was talking about how he caught all of the Mirror Universe versions because barbarians can't act civilized, where a civilized person can pretend to be barbaric. Looking at the infighting among the rebels that's going on, you can kind of see why he spotted that so quick.
So what's another thing?
Rebel Bashir is always starting shit.
Well, the funny thing about that is that they're trying to build their ship.
Yeah.
And it turns out Bashir is a captain, O'Brien is a captain. Someone points out, we got all these bloody captains.
O'Brien says it, yeah.
Nice, we had a fucking ship to go with it.
Yeah.
But, if you, ever read about any type of, revolutionaries after, they start winning some victories,
yeah,
that's a very realistic thing to happen.
Yeah.
Start happening. They give themselves all these promotions and stuff, and they have, no resources to do anything
Right,
with.
Right.
But... there's never a shortage of generals and revolutions.
Mm-hmm.
But the is that it for that episode?
I think so. So the next one is, I think, arguably the weakest,
the most skippable.
The most skippable. And also plays off some of the ideas that they had been exploring a little bit with Sisko, which is the nature of kind of lost love.
Yeah.
Between the
it's
ones.
Redundant watching these back to back.
Yeah. It's just that. So this episode is titled Resurrection. And, you want to just kind of walk us through some of the basics.
Season 6, I'm not going to go too deep into the story.
Yeah, we can kind of move it along quickly, but essentially it uses a character I didn't know about, but you tell me was a big shot.
I knew going into this that you wouldn't know about him, but Vedek Baral, who was one of Kira's boyfriends she had over the course of the 7 years of the show. Yeah, he's Bajoran. He's basically a
spiritual leader.
He's a saint or an archbishop or something. He has a position within the Bajoran religion.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had died on the show. I don't want to go into details about how he died. That's a whole other episode. But basically, she sees her dead lover come back to life. Except it's not him. It's the guy from the Mirror Universe. And he is this. Okay, one interesting thing here is that you do kind of get to see an exploration of an alternative version of a character getting into some of that, what's different, what's not. Like, is someone totally opposite? Or are they pretty much the same? Because this guy is pretty different, but then like over the course of the episode, he goes through an arc where he turns out like he does have a lot of those same positive qualities that this Prime Universe guy had.
Right, but he does see himself ultimately. At some point, I think Kira, who will recur in the episode, I think says something like, oh God, is it this episode? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was when she was talking about O'Brien in another episode, and she mentions them having no souls. But I was trying. Basically, this guy believes the worst about himself. He's essentially been a collaborator for so long that he can't picture himself crossing over, which he would otherwise have an opportunity to do. He returns kind of Kira essentially kind of befriends him, and then they fall back in sort of love again. Seems very sincere. He kind of is, recognizes the weirdness of their situation. What does he say he's there for? What's his ostensible reason for being in the Prime Universe?
He said he's just like on the run.
Okay, yeah. And
that turns out to be a lie. Yeah,
turns out to be a lie. He is playing her. Honestly, he's in the role that is very often the femme fatale in movies. Will they have a heart of gold at the end and let the hero go?
Gender role reversal type thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
I hadn't until just now either. And indeed, he does have the heart of gold, but it's also the same way sometimes characters like Catwoman or somebody like that will say, yes, I helped you out here, I saved your life, but I can't live your life. I can't be the hero you want me to be. I'm just not that person. And that's what happens to him. He cannot stay true to it. I guess he goes back even knowing that having betrayed Kira, who once again returns as she's in every one of these episodes, isn't she? The intendant.
Yes.
Betrays her, and he goes back knowing that she is gonna essentially could skin him alive, torture him, whatever for his betrayal. But he kind of feels like it's his lot in life to kind of, he's probably done enough bad that he feels like having been exposed to somebody good like Kira, he probably deserves it, You definitely get that vibe.
Yeah, it's...
by the way, I thought the actor who portrayed him did a very good job.
Yeah, and he did play him very differently from how he played Prime Universe.
Oh, interesting.
Also, it wasn't...
Was Prime Universe pretty perfect guy?
Yeah, for the most part. There's this one time where he really had to show some range before, where your favorite character in Star Trek, Loxana Troy, is on the station.
Yep.
And because she's going through this weird thing that happens to Betazoid women when they get older, and their telepathic brains start shooting their emotions into other people.
Yep.
And so people on the ship start acting weird and getting
She infects them with her Betazoid menopause.
Yes, but she makes everyone horny, and they all start getting crushes on people. Jake falls in love with Kira, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're 15, leave me alone."
I have to say, I believe this is actually a good premise for an episode.
Funny thing is that in this episode, Dr. Bashir and Kira end up getting the hots for each other and make out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And not too long after that, those two actors ended up making a baby in real life.
Oh, interesting.
So they had to explain why Kira was pregnant on the show.
Oh, wow.
But there's actually an episode where, because the way they explain it is that O'Brien and his wife Keiko were pregnant again.
Yep.
And because they already had one kid, so it's not going to change the status quo to give them another.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an accident on a ship, and the doctor had to do some crazy last minute things to save the pregnancy. He beamed the baby into Kira's womb, and so she's carrying the kid.
That is the single most creative notion for a real-life pregnancy in a TV show I've ever heard in my life.
But there's this one episode where Kira's all pregnant, and she says to Bashir, "This is all your fault, Which, there's a little bit of a meta thing going on there.
That is crazy. I'm excited about this. One more thing that I'm looking forward to. I guess I'm looking forward to a Loxana and Troy episode, believe it or not. But yeah, this was a kind of personal episode. It was another chance for Kira to kind of come to the fore. But it felt a little bit more it fell into tropes a little bit, I feel like. and was somewhat of a lesser outing, and also, a little, like you say, a little bit redundant. We'd seen Sisko wrestle with some of these same questions.
And it also airs in Season 6 of DS9, which is probably my favorite single season of Star Trek ever.
Yep.
And there is so much badass stuff going on there with, not just with the Dominion War, but there's a bunch of other neat little, more isolated episodes within that season. And this just doesn't measure up with the rest of them.
I did like their sort of plot, which you don't find out a ton about, but like they were going to steal, what was that, the tier, or what religious,
the orb,
or Bajoran religious artifact. They were going to basically steal that back so they could use it to sort of rally Bajor behind them in the mirror universe and basically use it as another power base. And I did like that idea a little bit. Yeah, otherwise kind of skippable. So, but let's close it out on a high note.
Yeah, on a very high note. So the final episode we're going to talk about, the Emperor's New Cloak from Season 7 of DS9.
Yep.
One of the last episodes of the show. It was right before they hit like their 10-episode arc where they wrap everything up. But this episode has the Grand Nagus is captured in the Mirror Universe. A message is sent through the Mirror Universe version of Ezri. She's not Ezri Dax, but...
Well, that is to say, the Grand Nagus of the Prime Universe is captured and taken to the Mirror Universe.
Well, no, he went over there on his own.
Oh, right. Yeah, we'll find out later. Yeah, he was like looking for business prospects.
For business ventures.
Yeah, and he got captured.
Universe. Yeah, bit off more than he could chew.
Fancy that with a Ferengi.
He sent a message to Quark saying, I need you to bring a cloaking device over here. They don't have them in the Mirror Universe, and they'll let me go.
Right.
Doesn't make sense because in the very first Mirror Universe episode of DS9, we saw a crossover. We do see Cardassian and Klingon ships that can cloak. I got no prize for it, though.
All right.
That technology that Jennifer Sisko is working on to detect the rebel bases was eventually fully completed, and it makes the cloaking devices of the Mirror Universe useless.
Okay.
So they needed a different type of cloaking device. Turns out the Prime Universe ones will work over there.
All right. What do we think that it had been about like a year maybe before, or a couple of years before? Based in real time, I guess maybe like 2 or 3 years prior.
That would have been 4 years.
Okay. So they've gone 4 years cloakless.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there is a Quark and who is it? Is it Rom?
Yeah.
They sneak onto a Klingon ship and steal a cloak, and it's very slapsticky and funny because the cloaking device is itself cloaked.
Yes.
And so they get to walk around looking like they're carrying stuff.
And they're miming it, basically.
Yeah, and honestly, it was super funny.
And the Klingon General Martok gets fucking pissed when he finds out his cloaking device is gone.
Yep.
So you have that funny moment where he's like charging after them. He's like, Ferengi!
Is that like right before they basically make the jump? Yeah. But yeah, I also appreciated them straining over it, pausing to set it down because it was so heavy, and then having to just pretend that they were just kind of hanging out in a corridor when Sisko and the Klingon guy walk by, and they very badly cover.
And I love the Ferengi episodes of DS9. I love that brand of comedy. I think the DS9 is one of the most modern Star Trek shows, and it holds up so well today. The Ferengi comedy stuff is probably one of the things that might date it a little bit for some people.
Yeah.
But
I'm liking it more than I expected to, given that I kind of hated Ferengi. The treatment of it. Actually, Quark, who's the actor who portrays him?
Armin Shimmerman.
He is much more nuanced than I expected, even in like when he's in comedic
Super
situations.
Nice guy too.
It feels like that's cool. It feels like he kind of brings a little bit more depth than I would have expected to Quark, even in the pretty broad comedy bits. And like this one had a bit also where I believe he's in prayer. And to like, I forget who it is, but he's like the great, the great debtor or whatever to us, or like,
you get that joke to where he's praying because he's in love with Ezri Dax.
And that's it.
And he's praying that like, if you get Dr. Bashir out of the picture, don't kill him or anything. But, just get him off the station for a while. And then, like, right after he's done, paying his prayer bribes,
Yeah.
that's when Mirror Esri shows up in his quarters, and she's wearing, like, all the black leather and stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my god, you're kinkier than I thought you'd be. Like,
yeah.
This is awesome.
It's a kind of trashy bit of humor. I'm gonna go ahead and say another super hot Mirror Universe babe.
And in a lot of ways, to me, like, Quark feels kind of more like a character from Cheers than from Star Trek. Like, being a bartender is part of that. But you also get, like, a bunch of sitcom-y type stuff where you do get, like, funny situational humor built around sex and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is explored through him, more so than any other character or aspect of Star Trek.
So yeah, Quark. Some of the jokes about him endlessly pursuing Dax and always it's like, why won't you give me that kiss or whatever. Kind of a little on the creeper side these days. Would definitely be called out, rightly so, in a probably more obvious way, where she kind of like grinned and bared it sometimes. But I will say, because it was a different time, and Armin Shimmerman did do such a good job with the character. I think the kind of the relative innocence of the humor comes through. If we were to do it now, we'd do it different. But at the time, he did as good as he could with some kind of cheap jokes.
Yeah, and he always plays them like so realistic. He never really feels like a cartoon character.
Yeah. And yet it's like crazy stuff. The prayer he cites has like all these.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Every line in it is something that essentially it's out referring to all the great things in life as financial transactions and loans and all this. I loved it though. I thought it was one of the best Ferengi things I'd ever seen.
And it pairs well with his brother Rom, who very much is he's basically.
I mean, if we didn't say it, this is a Ferengi-centric episode.
Yeah, and when you bring Rom in, his brand of comedy, it is more cartoonish because he's a total buffoon.
Yeah, Rom is the dumb Ferengi.
He's basically like Goofy from Disney cartoons.
Yep.
But
we touched on this in the very first Mirror Universe episode. Is that Rom tries to figure out the Mirror Universe logic.
Yes. Like,
he's like, well, if you're a good guy in this universe, you should be a bad guy in that universe. Well, if we were going to go right here, then we should go left, right? And, like, it's like, because the Mirror Universe doesn't really work logically, it's a meta joke about how the internal consistency of the Mirror Universe is a little dodgy. You got to kind of play with it.
They bring in the Mirror Universe version of Brunt.
Who's that?
He was the Ferengi that was helping Esri.
Okay.
But in the Prime timeline, he is Liquidator Brunt. He's part of the Ferengi Finance Authority. Mm-hmm. And he is kind of like Quark's arch enemy. Mm-hmm. And he's always trying to run them out of business because they have it in for each other.
Got it.
And so he's like a total dick. And but like over there, like he's kind of nice.
Yeah.
That also gave them another Ferengi to kill off, so they can keep the tradition of killing a Ferengi in every Mirror Universe episode.
Messed up.
And they make the Regent Worf pretty scary in this episode.
It's true, although he's also kind of like the creator creates his own downfall. He kind of misses some things he shouldn't, and isn't maybe as on the ball as he should be. But they capture everybody at some point. At certain points, all the Ferengi are.
They're all captured by Mirror Universe Garrick.
Yep.
And then I love how Garrick's going to kill them all. He has the most painful sounding poison in the world, where he says this will boil your organs.
Yeah, from the inside and all this. Yeah, it's horrible.
And they're saying well, why aren't you interrogating us like our Garrick? And it's so stupid and kind of unoriginal. But just the way that they deliver it, it makes me laugh. And a big part of this is probably my love for these characters. Mm-hmm. But when they're just saying oh, our Garrick would have us hanging upside down and spilling all of our secrets by this point.
Yeah, them attempting to fast talk their way out of it through Ferengi, really clumsy Ferengi techniques.
Well, but there's more to it because Rom and I don't know if you know this, being less familiar with DS9.
Yeah.
Rom is an idiot, but he's also really smart with technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was
What are they forcing him to do?
to set up the cloaking device.
Oh, right.
On the Regent's ship.
Yes.
But he sabotages things so that all the power drops, and that actually allows Mirror O'Brien on the Mirror Defiant to defeat them.
Right.
And by doing that, they kind of win like a permanent victory.
Yeah.
For the Terran rebels.
Yeah.
So these Ferengi goofballs, you know, going over the Mirror Universe and acting a fool, save the day, and conclude the Mirror Universe storyline that Deep Space Nine told.
Yeah, it's if you had just told me the plot of this, given that until I started actually watching Deep Space Nine, mostly disliked Ferengis as kind of like the comedic villains of Next Gen that I felt like their comedy wasn't quite up to par. And maybe
that's what they were on Next Generation.
Right. They didn't have an Armin Shimmerman with that.
Even though he was in the very first
I know he was,
episode.
but they didn't have Armin Shimmerman as he would be.
And by his own admission, he thinks that that's a terrible episode.
Right. So they had not essentially matured into the comedic Ferengi that we know.
Ira Steven Bear's writing was a big, like, especially like when he took over as like showrunner on DS9 in season 3. Mm-hmm. Like, he really understood the Ferengi. Right. He's basically saying like the Ferengi is the modern 20th century person with all of our shitty flaws. Yeah. In this futuristic world where humans are these, you know, they come from this utopia federation. Right. And this is like a modern day everyman, right, living in that
trying
world.
To figure out like how to be like not like fitting it all into the super egalitarian, super selfless mode that's expected in the future.
And that, there's some truth to that. Like a lot of times, the Ferengi do kind of feel like the relatable characters. Right. On the original series, they had Dr. McCoy kind of filling that role. Right. Right. And on Deep Space Nine, it's the Ferengi.
And it's just that they're so larger than life that, you know, you don't think of them necessarily that way, but I do think that that's why when they're well written or better written, you know, than on Next Generation they usually were, that, I found myself liking them. What I was going to say is, I think if you had just told me the plot of this episode, I would have been like, so a bunch of bumbling Ferengi kind of bring down the Klingon-Cardassian alliance. That sounds stupid. As portrayed, I loved it. Like, as delivered, you know, with those writers and those actors and all that. And I actually kind of liked that there's something about fascism being defeated by a couple of bumbling goofs. I don't know why. That it was so, you know, it's essentially, until Discovery came along, it was the last word on the Mirror Universe, and it's kind of close to a happy ending. Maybe not so much for a few Ferengi. Probably not, you know, not a happy ending for the Regent or the Intendant. But exciting times for the Terran Empire.
Yes. So now we have covered every single Mirror Universe episode of Star Trek, and it all ends with the Terrans having a great and glorious victory.
Right. As good a reason as I can think of to remove these agonizers on us and let us go our way in peace.
Ha ha ha! In the end, the Terrans always win. A clear testament of our superiority.
I'm not sure that's exactly what the DS9 writers were going for. The children shall lead!
Stop, Rosa! With the orgasm candle! What the hell were they thinking? Enough! We've covered every Mirror Universe episode in all of the Star Trek shows. Please let us go!
That's not going to happen. We've come to rather like running the show on Tex-Trek.
Yes, I believe we should stick around. And perhaps it is time to explore how our universe has been depicted in Star Trek and other mediums beyond the shows.
Interesting. But what about these two?
To the booth with them!
Oh no! Alternative factor! Fuck you, Lazarus!
Precious cargo! I hate you! And until next time, long live the Empire, y'all! Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.